If you have not registered for this session, you're still welcome to walk in and participate. Our next session will be on July 10th at 10 a.m. here at UCF. The Welcoming Congregation Committee will be holding a class this Thursday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. called Responding to the Anti-Trans Movement, a course for UUs. Especially in light of the recent Supreme Court decision to allow states to block gender-affirming care to children, this class will give us important information on how we can make our congregation more welcoming and how to navigate conversations about trans issues. We would love to have a large portion of our congregation participate in this interactive learning experience. There's a sign-up link in our WAVE newsletter, or you can sign up on the bulletin board in the social hall. Now, we center ourselves here in sacred space and let music guide the way.
Please join in the responsive reading. Your part is in italics. Where in our hearts is that burning desire? Whence comes that drive in us? Whence comes that storm? But sometimes, with a sigh, you can cross that vast desert. You may find sometime a treasure on your way. And now, let us speak these words as one. Come, let us worship together.
Alan, would you like to come up and help us light the chalice this morning? Oh, how about our visitor? Would you like to light a candle? Philip will help you, okay? very much. Our chalice lighting words are from Gregory. Did it go out? Oh, darn. I think you might as well light the candle from that. Okay. This fire is a reminder of the light within us all, the yearning for freedom, the longing for truth, the flame of intuition, the torch of conscience. We dedicate this service to the remembrance of this holy light. And now we also light our peace candle to remind ourselves that peace is a process that requires work, that peace is not merely an absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. All right, I think this counts as number 3 for things that can go wrong, and then we'll have no more things that can go wrong. Thank you. And now, please rise as you are willing and able to join in singing hymn number 73 in the gray hymnal, verse number 4, Chant for the Seasons, to celebrate the summer solstice. One more time. Oh, stars have turned the starry summer is upon us. Vernal stars have turned the starry summer is upon us. Sweet the rocks hovering above the hot and yellow hills. The vernal clouds have turned the starry summer is upon us. Crickets in the night, chirping in our ears, the sound of moonlit music. Vernal clouds have turned the starry summer is upon us. Each week we make some space and time to be human and celebrate our joys and grieve our sorrows together. Should you wish to share a personal joy or sorrow about a person or persons in your life, there is a paper to fill out and place in the basket on the way to the chalice. After our ritual, I will read these personal joys and concerns to the congregation. You may now line up here in this aisle and over by the wall and select stones or shells from the basket to represent your joys and concerns, and gently place them into the chalice of water. We welcome your joys and sorrows with our stones and water ritual. Sadly, our president decided to bomb 3 nuclear sites in Iran overnight. We have to pray for peace now more than ever. Robin shares that they're finding their way back to peace and a spiritual way of living with acceptance of who I am. Adam shares, we all have power. May we use it for the benefit of others. May those with the most power not use it at the expense of the weak and poor. Martha Nassett is very appreciative of all the help from the UCF community. Her yard sale wasn't very profitable, but it was priceless to be with you all. It was priceless to be with you, Martha. John and Janine Brope's grandson, Kyle Essex, is on life support with COPD. Kyle was born with spina bifida and has faced many challenges in his 46 years. Please pray for him and his parents, Paul and Judy Essex. Maria Lundgren, who is a Marine's mom, says for peace on earth, especially in Ukraine and the Middle East. Happy Eubank turned 91 on Friday. Unfortunately, she had another fall last week and is having a difficult time recovering. And we brought a card for you to sign, and we'll have it in the social hall after the service. And Robert says, please share some healing energy with Layla's mom. She just fell and broke her leg. Let's offer a moment of prayer, each in our own way, for all those whose freedoms are curtailed, for those who are in prison or in detention centers, for people who are bought and sold in illegal human trafficking, for all whose freedoms are limited because of their gender or sexual orientation, for those who feel trapped in abusive relationships. We ask for clarity to speak and act on their behalf when we could help bring more freedom to the world. We offer our compassion. We ask the Spirit of life to move us towards liberation and justice.
Today, our time for all ages will be Inventor McGregor by Kathleen T. Peely. Hector McGregor lived in a higgledy-piggledy house with a cheery wife, 5 children, and a hen called Hattie. Mendon McGregor, everyone called him, because he could mend most anything that needed mending, they said, from fishing rods and fairy wands to top hats and rubber ducks. Every day, people brought him their squeaky skates, squiggle teaspoons, wobbly wagons, tangled kites, knotted yo-yos, headless dolls, and footless soldiers. With a blob of glue or a squirt of oil, with a tap of his hammer or a shimmy here and a shimmy here, Hector McGregor fixed whatever needed fixing and sent everyone on their way with a skip, a hop, and a hum. In between his gluing and oiling and hammering, Hector McGregor liked to stroll down the winding lane at the back of his house where the bluebells grew and the smell of wet heather lingered long and sweet. There he sang a snippet of a song, or twirled a whirl of a fling, or sometimes he pulled out his palette and his easel to paint a picture. Then back to his work he went with a heart that was both happy and full. And every night before the shades were drawn, Hector McGregor nestled his fiddle beneath his chin and played a rousing reel or a sweeping Strathspey, while all around the house, from pantry to parlor, his cheery wife, his 5 children, and his hen called Hattie whirled and whooshed and weeched. One day, Angus the postman stopped by to have his bag patched. "That wee scoundrel of a Scotty down Loopy Lane has torn it to tatters again," he grumbled. "Dear me," said Hector McGregor, we need to stop that scallywag. Leave it to me, I'll think of something." The next day, Hector McGregor handed Angus a shiny new bag covered with all sorts of buttons, dangling cords, and flapping flaps. "What's this?" asked Angus. "It's a barking bag," said Hector McGregor. "Whenever you see that Scotty, just push this button and flip this flap, and it'll set off a barking noise as loud as 100 wolfhounds." With his new bag slung over his shoulder, Angus the postman went on his way. By the end of the day, the whole town had heard the story of how the barking bag had sent the Scotty fleeing with his tail between his legs. Now everyone wanted Hector McGregor to concoct some thingamabob or thingamajig to make their world a little better or brighter. When Mrs. McKay complained that her boys, who dawdled and dilly-dallied all the way to school, Hector McGregor crafted detachable monkey tails so they could swing and swoop and swish their way through the treetops. To lighten the children's school bags, he invented a paper pump that blew up their books with helium. Now down the road they sauntered, clutching their books above them like a bunch of bobbling balloons. For Mrs. McIver, who had triplets and a husband at sea, Hector McGregor pieced together some helping hands that she could strap to her shoulder. Every morning, with a flick of a switch, off went the wiping noses, zipping zippers, tying laces, and holding hands. For Jamie Campbell, who always slept through his alarm clock, Hector McGregor built him an alarm bed that popped his head from the pillow like a jack from his box. And for wee Willie Beatty, the smallest boy in his class, Hector McGregor cobbled a pair of bouncing boots so that he could see over the walls and fences and heads. Inventor McGregor, everyone called him now because he could invent almost anything that needed inventing, they said. And in between his ideas simmering and sparking, Hector McGregor still liked to stroll down the winding lane at the back of his house where the bluebells grew and the smell of wet heather lingered long and sweet. There he sang his snippet of a song, painted a picture, or twirled a whirl of a fling. One day, the president of the Royal Society of Inventors, Nigel Withers, paid Hector McGregor a visit. "Congratulations, Mr. McGregor," he said. "We're so impressed with all your inventions that we'd like you to become a member of our society. We want you to start working for us immediately in your very own laboratory in the city." "Why, thank you," said Hector McGregor. "But I don't think I'll need a laboratory. You see, I like working here where I can sing and paint and—" "Oh, no, protested Mr. Withers. "Real inventors don't have time for all that nonsense. They invent, that's all. Just imagine how many more gadgets and gizmos you'll be able to think up with a clear head and no distractions." Hector McGregor scratched his chin. He said. Maybe you're right. And the next week, Hector McGregor set off to work in the city in his very own laboratory. Mr. Withers gave him a long white coat and a badge that read, Inventor McGregor. Outside his door hung a sign with the words, Quiet, Inventor Inventing. All day, Hector McGregor sat at his drawing board in the laboratory thinking about what to invent. He thought, and he thought, and he thought. So long did he think that by the time he arrived home at night, his children were sound asleep in bed, and his cheery wife sat dozing by the fire with Hattie the hen in her lap. The next day was no different, nor the next, nor the one after that. Day after day, week after week, Hector McGregor sat at his drawing board in the laboratory, staring out the window at the toy store across the street. He thought, and he thought, and he thought, but no matter how long or how hard he thought, no ideas came to him. Soon, people stopped calling him Inventor McGregor. Whenever he walked down the street, the people whispered to one another, "It's sad, a mistake, not a real inventor." Hector McGregor hung his head in shame. Whenever Mr. Withers popped his head around the door of the laboratory, Hector McGregor saw the frown in his eyes. And again, he hung his head in shame. Maybe I'm not a real inventor, after all, he thought one day. Maybe I should give back my badge, my coat, and my laboratory. But as he was thinking this thought, he noticed some workers painting the toy store across the road. Suddenly, an urge ticked down his arms and into his fingertips. Up he bolted, out the door he flew. Across the street he dashed. "Quick, quick," he cried. "I need to borrow your brushes and paint." Bewildered and befuddled, the men handed them over. Back to the laboratory raced Hector McGregor with the buckets dangling from his arms. Clutching a brush in each hand, he began to slosh and swish the colors across the laboratory wall. Splish, splash, splosh. First, he painted a picture of his cheery wife sitting beneath the plum tree at the side of his house. Next came a picture of his 5 children paddling in the pond by the front gate. Finally, Hattie, his hen, appeared, pecking her corn at the bottom of the winding lane. Hector McGregor threw down his brushes and beamed at all the faces he loved splashed across the wall. With a hoot and a holler, he dashed out the door and flew down the street. "Where are you going?" Mr. Withers called after him. "Home to my happy, happy home," cried Hector McGregor. Back at his higgledy-piggledy house, Hector McGregor kissed his cheery wife, his 5 children, and his hen called Hattie. He strolled down the winding lane behind his house where the bluebells grew and the smell of wet heather lingered long and sweet. There he sang a snippet of a song. He twirled a whirl of a fling. And he painted a picture of a marmalade cat curled up in a patch of sunlight. Then, back to his inventing he went with a heart that was happy and full. Week after week, one more incredible invention after another spilled out of him. Peppermint pencils, doggy Wellingtons, jelly bean erasers, tartan grass, mufflers to warm noses, and books that glowed in the dark. Inventor McGregor, everyone called him again, because he could invent most anything that needed inventing, they said. Just as long as he could sit, sing, and paint, and fiddle, and fling, and love all that he had to love. And every night, Inventor McGregor nestled his fiddle beneath his chin and played a rousing reel or a sweeping Strathspey, all while around the house, from pantry to parlor, his cheery wife, his 5 children, and his hen called Hattie, whirled and whooshed and weeched. The end. And now, we sing our children to their religious education classes with the blessing song. It's a blessing you were born, and it matters what you do. What you know about God is a piece of the truth. Be what you do, and you don't have to do it alone. It's a blessing I was born, and it matters what I do. What I know about God is a piece of the truth. Be what you do, and you don't have to do it alone. It's a blessing we were born, and it matters what we do. What we know about God is a piece of the truth. Be what you do, and we don't have to do it alone. Cha cha cha. We have one more concern. Please send good thoughts to Jason Pesh, who is recovering from kidney stone surgery. Yeah. All right. Now, we invite you into a moment of silence and meditation. Breathing will bring us into meditation, and music will bring us out. The question of free will remains one of the most confounding and elusive questions of existence. The free will question has haunted us out of time, occupying social, cultural, academic, theological, spiritual, and psychological real estate since the very inception of these fields. Humans have always lived in worlds of choiceless choices and phantasmic slippage, forever locked into the tempests of temporality, and storms, like all things, must pass. In a word, we live with ludicrous uncertainty, but we also have the ability to reason and to learn, if we care to do so. But there's the rub. Who cares? So what? And why bother? go deeper. Do we want to want the things that we want? I'm reminded of a passage in the Bhagavad Gita where the hero, Arjuna, says to Krishna, "The mind is very restless, turbulent, strong, and obstinate. It appears to me that it is more difficult to control than the wind." Only what we call the mind is not merely our brains. This is not a simple matter of Cartesian dualism. Many contemporary philosophers hold that the mind is more of a field of perception, from our cerebral hemispheres down to the tips of our toes and fingers, and spanning all that which we understand in the world to exist. If there is injustice anywhere, our minds may be perturbed. The mind is also understanding and misunderstanding. The physical forces and entities in which we find ourselves enmeshed, invigorated, or disaffected. We cannot always control our circumstances, and therefore cannot always control our minds, our desires, our actions. The world is indeed ludicrous. But personally, I mean this more in the etymological sense. The Latin ludus, meaning game. We can keep playing the game, keep on struggling, keep on breathing, keep on loving. Interestingly, existentialist philosophy dictates that people are like dice. We throw ourselves into the direction of our own choosing. This quote is often attributed to Jean-Paul Sartre, although there is no evidence that he stated this verbatim. But it is true nonetheless. We can roll our dice selves, but there's no guarantee that we'll roll a natural 20 on the first try. With that, I'm happy to share this sermon with you all. This piece called Spiritual Freedom was originally written by Reverend Darcy Lane and provided by Soul Matters. So from here on out, whenever you hear me or Karen make an I statement, remember that these are the words of Reverend Lane. How much freedom do we really have? Sometimes our lives can feel very constricted. We don't have enough time to do the things we want. We don't have enough money to buy the things we want. Cultural norms limit our freedom in what we do and say. We have responsibilities to our families and to our employers. Sometimes we can feel boxed in by the external realities of our lives. And because we are called to live an ethical life, an authentic life, a compassionate life, we can feel like the choices shrink even further. I often get a sense of constriction trying to make the right choice, the perfect choice. I agonize about whether I am going the right way. I happen to be listening to an interview with Kieran Trace, who claims that our true nature is freedom, that in fact we have oceans of freedom. I like the sound of that. Oceans of freedom. I felt better just hearing her say that. But what did she mean? I think she was pointing us toward a spaciousness that is available in us and all around us if we are open and open ourselves to it. Years ago, my yoga teacher, Kent Bond, used to talk about making spaciousness in our yoga poses. Our real job is to be space makers, he said. Even though we may be holding a difficult pose or a boring pose, he challenged us to create a felt sense of spaciousness in whatever position we were in. For those of you who don't do yoga, imagine an ice cube tray coming fresh out of the freezer. At first, the ice is adhered to the plastic tray, but you wiggle it a little and the cubes fit more loosely into their cubby holes. Sometimes we see our limits like walls around our lives, and we spend so much energy, so much attention pushing against these walls. But we can also turn our attention to the freedom we have within those constraints, even if it's as much as an ice cube as in a tray. Let's take our hero, Inventor McGregor. Anyone would agree that being the parent of 5 young children provides significant limits to personal freedom, especially on a handyman salary. And yet, within those limits, McGregor has invented a life for himself where, between gluing and oiling and hammering, He takes time to walk the winding lane in the back of his house, to paint, to fiddle, to enjoy his family. This is one way of looking for freedom in our lives. When we are feeling cramped by our job, our financial situation, or our families, we can wiggle around a bit in our lives and see where space can be found. I discovered recently that when I get up earlier, once I recover from the alarm going off, I enjoy the wiggle room of having an extra half hour to make and eat my breakfast at my own pace in a quiet house. Or I can get up even earlier and hit the yoga studio while it's still dark out. I feel like I found a hidden cache of time all for myself. If we look for it, we might find ways to make space for ourselves. We may find freedom to choose a path that feels right to us. It may be hard to believe in oceans of freedom, but no matter how tightly we squeeze our fingers together, water will always wiggle out of our cupped hands. Could we believe at least in a trickle of freedom? Could we see the gaps and spaces where freedom flows all around us? We might start noticing all the choices we make every single day. A friend felt stuck in a job where after years of her loyal service, the corporate culture around her had turned toxic. "I'm choosing to stay," she told me. "I'm not stuck. This is my choice." Our choices don't always feel good, but they are still choices. And this affirmation that she had the freedom to stay or go helped her stay sane while she put aside a financial safety net week after week until that day when she told me, with both trepidation and joy, "I gave my notice today." Whatever the external limits to our freedom, there is always the possibility of cultivating inner freedom. This kind of freedom is much harder to define, is much slipperier, because it is so highly personal. I've been dealing with a lot of tongue twisters today. Only you know for sure when you have a sense of freedom in your heart, mind, and spirit. Many spiritual traditions encourage us to cultivate inner freedom, and in our Unitarian Universalist principles, we talk specifically about a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. This value on freedom is not something hippies came up with in the 1960s. It has been an explicit part of our faith since the Act of Religious Tolerance and Freedom of Conscience in 1568, when King John Sigismund declared, "No one shall compel them, for their souls would not be satisfied." Or, as the Universalists wrote in their Winchester Profession of 1803, "Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind." Freedom of thought, freedom of belief, is a cornerstone of our faith tradition. We believe that a sense of inner freedom, a sense of inner spaciousness, is a sign that we are headed in the right direction on our journey of spiritual growth. When I was training to be a spiritual director, we talked a lot about freedom. We talked about how to avoid limiting the freedom for those who came to us for direction. It's funny how subtle those limits can be. A casual comment like, "You must feel very sad," can put your directee in a bind. You're the authority. If you say they must feel sad, they might look at their inner experience through that lens. But what if that's not quite what they're feeling? What if they're really feeling angry or ashamed? Then they have to choose between disagreeing with you or putting aside their own experience to follow your suggestion. So we learned mostly to ask questions. How do you feel? Or do you feel sad? It turns out I am particularly susceptible to such things. I really want to give the right answer. I really want to be agreeable, to be easy to work with. But when they send out our monthly reflection when they send out our monthly reflection form, I felt a sense of inner constriction. I dreaded it. I put it off. Finally, I chose honesty as a starting place and wrote this. I feel a surprising amount of resistance to this form. It just felt physically bad to have to take all the extremely personal, beautiful, deep parts of my life and put them on a form like a high school assignment or a job application. I felt some inner door closing as I looked at the form. It puts me in a tight spot where I must answer these questions or fail to keep my commitments to the program. As you might expect, the facilitators replied with, "Sorry you don't like the form, would you like to talk?" And the form is for you. Use it however you want. I had seen that form as a narrow box, and I tried to shove myself into it. But that was my projection, my assumption. I had assumed there were external limits to my freedom, but when I tested those limits, I learned that there was plenty of freedom there for me to be who I am and express my truth. Secondary, or even tertiary freedom, the primal freedom, is the freedom to be the self. The freedom to live in the truth despite all circumstances. That primal freedom is not contingent on anything external. That is a way of being in the world, a way of being in our own hearts and our own minds. I don't want to understate the very real limits to freedom, like having to choose between the electric bill and the rent, like the brutal schedule of chemotherapy, like mass incarceration in white supremacy culture. But, Rohr suggests, the freedom to be the self, the freedom to live in the truth despite all circumstances, that is what great religion offers us. That is why the saints could be imprisoned and not lose their souls. They could be put down and persecuted like Jesus and still not lose their joy, their heart, or their perspective. Secular freedom is having to do what you want to do. Religious freedom is wanting to do what you have to do. Increasing our inner freedom does not always mean having more options. In Buddhist teaching, the ethical limits we put on ourselves actually increase our inner freedom. If we refrain from harming others, we are free from the pain and guilt of having harmed ourselves or others. By living ethical lives, we limit our options, but we feel free in heart and mind. Our freedom and our limitations are like two sides of the same coin. We are both free and not free in every moment. Both our freedoms and our constraints allow us to be not anything, but to be specifically who we are. For Hector McGregor, the fact of living in community, the particular problems of real people, formed his creativity into useful things. The very first mark you put on a blank page limits all that comes after. But you cannot have a painting or a novel or an invention without it. Every living being is limited by our biology, our ecosystem, by the times we live in. And yet filling every gap like a river flowing in its bed, surrounding us, permeating us, like the air we breathe, freedom is there too. All around us are oceans of freedom. The freedom to think what we think, the freedom to love what we love, the freedom to be the self, the freedom to live in truth despite all circumstances. And now I am passing the mic to Karen.
Hey, I got it. Okay. All right. I want to add one little comment about water having limits, in that when I lived in Maine, I lived near a beach, Reed State Park, And just love to watch, and of course we can do it here too, love to watch the rivulets of water going through the sand and going around the rocks, and it's just one of my favorite things to see. So now, please rise as you're willing and able to sing our anthem for this month, number 153, Oh, I Woke Up This Morning. Woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I was walking and talking with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I was singing and praying with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Yay. In the theme of pride, June's Share the Plate is for Carteret Community College's Sexuality and Gender Alliance, also known as SAGA. SAGA strives to make sure everyone feels comfortable in their own skin, and they hope to build a strong community that everyone feels welcome in. In the past, they have had game nights, gingerbread house decorating nights for the holidays, and annually they have a gala to celebrate their community. No one should feel alone, and SAGA works to ensure that that does not happen. Please give as generously as you can. I invite the greeters. It's okay. It's fine. It's fine. Please join in blessing this offering with hymn number 402, From You I Receive. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share.
Please join me in reading our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now, en español, extinguimos esta llama, pero no la luz de la verdad, el calor de comunidad o el fuego de nuestro compromiso. Esos los llevaremos en el corazón hasta que estemos juntos otra vez.
I invite our choir up to the chancel for our choir anthem. This is our last anthem of the church year. Draw the circle wide. The composer, Mark Miller, invites us to draw the circle wide so that we, as individuals, do not stand alone as we explore our spiritual freedom. You are all invited to join in on the final chorus. You'll see the words appear, and I will lead the singing.
Let's make our circle.
Yes, gather around, folks.
All right. Okay. Now let's draw this circle wide. It is UCF tradition to join hands and form anything close to a circle. However, if you prefer not to, or if moving is not what you need right now, please remain in the center of the circle, and we'll surround you with our presence and love.
Can we sing one more time? Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Go your ways, knowing not the answers to all things, yet seeking always the answer to one more thing than you know. Go now in peace, return in love. Blessed be.